Okay, let's see if that is working. Can you guys hear me? Just figured out how to get this chat enabled. We'll see if this actually works. Thank you, Luis, for being my beta tester here. Can you hear me? Let's see. Awesome. Oh man, sorry for the tech difficulty. I knew this was going to happen too. I don't think anyone in their right mind would believe I actually run a tech company. Yeah, I know. Now I can't see you either. This YouTube setup ain't great. It's kind of like you get one or the other. Um, might be able to do a. I'm almost afraid to mess with it, but you know what? Why not? Um, let's see. Okay, boom. Hey, there's like a little window. Maybe that works. I actually have no clue. Yeah. Thank you guys for bearing with me as I learn how to use YouTube. Cool. And I threw the old link in the old channel, so you can't switch your input and keep the stream up. So, and you can't pick back up a stream that you've closed. So, lesson learned. Cool. What's up, John? I feel like we had a couple people and we lost them, and we might just be left with a couple of us, but that's not the end of the world. Also, there's a lot of build up for a really short talk, so most of this is going to be us shooting the shit. Um, so with that, I can just kind of dive into this. Um, cool. So where do we go from here? So today I want to talk about your perfect day, and I want you to take a moment and just imagine your perfect day. I want you to picture waking up that day. Think about where you are. What do you do that morning? Do you have breakfast with your family? Do you have coffee with your partner? Do you go for a run? What time do you go to work? Or are you even working that day? I really want to take a moment and I want you guys to like just go through each chapter in your head of what that perfect day looks like. And then breathe it in. Like, how do you feel about that? Hopefully, you're feeling happy, maybe excited about the idea that you might experience that day in the future, maybe even sooner. And maybe if you're really lucky, you experienced it today. Now, I want you to picture your biggest goal. I'm talking about the goal that's driving you right now. And maybe it's a goal that's so big that you don't tell anyone about it. Or maybe you're the opposite and you've been shouting it at the top of your lungs for a while. Imagine accomplishing that goal. Maybe it's the recognition from your peers, making your own project, creating your own film or directing, or working for a studio that you really admire. Just really picture the moment when you cross the finish line on that goal, when you first walk into the studio, when you're first going on stage or accepting some award or first going on set. Now I want you to think about the Tuesday after you accomplish the goal. Like just a totally random Tuesday, the week after, And I bet you haven't really thought about that day. You think about driving to work that day, or 4 o'clock when you get a little drowsy and you need a coffee pick me up, or maybe you do a grocery store run that day. Like, think about how do you feel on that day. And today, I don't want to talk about how to accomplish your goals. I don't even want to talk about what it's like to accomplish them. Today, I want to talk about what happens afterwards, that Tuesday after, if you will. It's something we rarely talk about, and if you're goal driven like I am, you're probably so focused on accomplishing the actual goal that you don't really think much about what happens afterwards. Or maybe you've accomplished something big that you've spent years pursuing, and you've already experienced what I'm alluding to and wondered why. Why does something that feels so good, that drives us, often leave us with a feeling of sadness, uh, or emptiness, or even the feeling of being lost when that goal is no longer in front of us? Think about what a thrill it must be to perform on stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people, singing along to some song that you wrote, and how weird it must be to go home afterwards. Chris Hadfield, the astronaut, wrote a book called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, where he talks about what it's like to land after being in space. And he talks about how he spent his entire career training for this moment, and then it's behind him. Now, I haven't performed on stage to 100,000 people, but I have delivered a speech to a room of 10,000. And clearly, I have never been to space. But I have experienced many moments where it felt like I was returning with the pinnacle of my career behind me. So originally, I set out with a pretty simple goal. I wanted to paint every day. I hated school. I loved art. And the idea of going to college seemed pretty awful to me. And I wanted more than anything to be able to financially support myself with my art. And I still vividly remember the day I got my first job as an artist. Um, the feeling I had when I knew that I was going to have a career as an artist. I was so happy and excited and relieved that I felt like I had a future. Um, this was a goal that I lived every day. And every day I went into a studio, I was in disbelief that this was my day to day life now. Eventually, my goal evolved as I watched artists like Dylan Cole and Dussault do these big establishing shots on these films like Avatar and Lord of the Rings. I wanted to do those hero paintings for big blockbusters. But up until then, I had mostly been working on TV shows doing small paintings, little like set extensions. I wanted to work in film though. And I didn't just want to work on any films. I wanted to work on summer blockbusters, and I wanted to do the most heroic paintings. It took me 5 years to accomplish that goal. In that time, I changed jobs 18 times. Another way to look at this is I completed 79 projects before I got my first big movie. Um, Another way is I delivered 262 paintings before I got my hero painting. All these numbers kind of mean the same thing. I worked my ass off chasing this goal. And in 2013, I got the call from Digital Domain to come work on Iron Man 3. And this was it. This was the thing I had been working towards with every job, with every painting, every day. And I knew it as soon as I got the call, so I threw myself into that film, taking on every painting I could. I worked on weekends, I stayed late every day. At first, I was assigned these simple set extensions, and the better I did, the more they trusted me. Every time I delivered something good, the studio would give me something bigger and bigger until I finally got my hero shot. And after 6 months of work, we finally wrapped. I was so full of energy and exhausted at the same time. I hadn't really thought about anything other than Iron Man for 6 months and really hadn't thought about anything other than this moment for 5 years. I remember opening my front door, coming home on the last day of the project, and just dropping my bags, going straight to the couch. And I just sat there and stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't really have a thought in my head. I just had dedicated myself so fully to achieving this goal, and now I had done it, and I had a huge sense of emptiness that kind of just came over me. And I really wasn't sure what to do next or what I should even be thinking about. A few weeks later, the film was released, and I went to our cruise screening, and that's the only time I've ever seen that film. Uh, and the reception was exactly what I had hoped for. My paintings were everywhere around LA and around the world, and on covers of magazines and on billboards. But in the strangest way, it really didn't matter to me anymore. That was all in my past. It was this box I had already checked. And the moment was gone. What surprised me about this whole experience was how painful it was to actually achieve my goal. This sudden downshift from racing towards something to aimlessly driving was very disorienting. And yes, I took a couple of victory laps and I continued to work on big movies and eventually big shows and big games. But I often didn't know why I was doing it other than sustaining. And that's fine for a period of time. But we as people, we need to grow and we need a direction to move towards. And we need a goal to be our North Star. But why do we chase a goal if the act of accomplishing it is so painful? I just want to make sure before I keep going that y'all can hear me okay and this stream is working. I'm just looking for a thumbs up in the chat to know I should keep talking. Oh God, that's alarming. Hopefully it's just the delay here. Great. Okay. Cool. Thank you guys. So a few years later, I started tinkering in Unreal. I would wake up really early and play around with it before I headed to work. It really started out as playtime for me. And I started to remember being a kid and dreaming of creating my own video game. Um, I was working on it with a childhood friend, and that really became the theme for the game, our childhood. And I wanted to do something completely different from my own art style that I was doing professionally and challenge myself with something stylized and cartoony. As I started to put more and more hours into this little side project, this new goal started to form. I wanted to create and release a full video game and not just work on someone else's game. I wanted to make something that was my own. I started taking less freelance work and I started spending more and more time on this game until eventually I took the leap and went full time as an indie game developer. I learned programming. I had saved up quite a bit to hire concept artists and modelers and animators and sound designers and composers. And we built out this whole world with all these characters. And I got to a point where I had a working prototype, and I showed Banks Boutte, who's my co-founder at Kitbash, and we decided to start a publishing company. to get this game out into the wild. And we learned everything about video game publishing that we could. We learned about marketing and PR and Twitch streamers and influencers. We made trailers. We went on press tours. We went to trade shows in LA and San Francisco and San Antonio and Boston and Seattle. We became friends with the people at Steam, at Microsoft, at Nintendo, at Twitch. We learned about all the big game streamers and threw parties to build excitement as we were finishing this game and ready to release it. And all of this led up to this culmination of a 3-year intense journey where we live streamed to millions of people from our Las Vegas launch party for the game. If you haven't noticed, the game is called Sleep Tight. And then in this final moment, we hit the launch button and the game was released to the public. And that one instant moment at 12:01 a.m., the game went live and it was over. This time, instead of driving home, I jumped on an airplane home. And instead of staring at my ceiling, I was staring at the back of an airplane seat. But it was very much the same feeling. It was actually even worse. This time it wasn't emptiness that I felt from accomplishing this goal. It was actually a feeling of loss. I felt like I was mourning my project, that it was no longer mine. This little thing that had been my baby for so long was out in the world. It belonged to everyone. And I spiraled into a really dark depression that lasted a couple months after this game came out. And I started talking with other game developers, and they started to confirm that, hey, this is totally normal. It was so normal that there's actually a term for it, and it's called post-release depression. And when I heard about this, all I could think was, why the hell would we spend years working on something that we know is going to result in months of depression? And how come no one ever talks about it? Like, seriously, I had to dig to find these articles. And did no one think that this might be a useful piece of information to have? Like, maybe we could prepare for it or change our approach to goal setting to avoid it altogether. And this really started a new journey for me to try to figure out how to do this better. How do we keep the positive parts of goal setting, as in setting a North Star that challenges us to grow and keeps us focused on the direction we want to move towards? And how do we eliminate the negatives of accomplishing a goal that often leaves us feeling empty, lost, or even depressed? So the new challenge is Kit Bash, and actually today is the fourth birthday of Kit Bash. We launched 4 years ago today. If you don't know what Kit Bash is, the simplest way of explaining it is that we build premium 3D assets for movies and video games. So if you want to create a fantasy world like this, you can come get some castles from us, or some wagons and barrels, and I guess that's a meat cart, or anything else you might need. Um, that's the simplest way of explaining it, but I think that's pretty far from the best way of explaining it. More accurately, we set out to enable and inspire the creators of virtual worlds. And one of the ways we do that is by providing assets to use in the creation of your worlds. But we also do that by releasing shows with world builders, creating articles and content to help teach people how to do this, interviewing artists and spotlighting them, hosting contests, cultivating community, and so many other things. And we have a really great team of people working at Kitbash who believe that the future of the internet is 3D and are dedicated to making 3D more accessible and exciting to everyone. And part of my job and Banks's job here at Kitbash is to set the North Star, to reinforce the mission of Kitbash and to help guide the objectives to continue to deliver on that mission. And both of us have accomplished many things in our lives and in our careers and have experienced the ups and downs of what that means. So with Kitbash, we've tried to do this in a healthier and a more sustainable way. When we started Kitbash, we were just a couple people in a garage that wanted to work on the metaverse. And we knew that we were 10 years too early. So we decided instead to see how we could support people making movies and games today, since they're the most likely to build the 3D experiences of tomorrow. We fell into all the same traps of goal setting as we got ready for launch. We thought that launching the website was the finish line. And so we worked for a while building our first kits, designing our branding, building the website. We shot promo videos and made ads and even worked with a PR team to help promote the launch, very much in the same fashion as putting out a video game. But something different happened here. The day we launched is when we started to see artists use the assets and started to meet the people that would become our community. And we didn't cross any finish line. The day we launched, we realized was the starting line. And this was a big paradigm shift for me. Banks and I realized that this project wasn't about a finish line. This was something we didn't want to stop doing, and we needed to set a North Star that would keep us moving in the right direction for a very long time. And as the company grew, we also saw the need for short-term goals that could rally a team behind it to make sure we made tangible progress towards our longer and bigger goals. And we've experimented with many different iterations of this. And I'm sure we'll find better ways to do it as we continue to be more ambitious and as our team becomes more complex. But this is how we do it today, at least. Everyone at Kitbash has objectives. We use OKRs. That stands for objective, key result. So we're tying an objective to something that we can measure. So an example of an objective might be to increase kit production, and a key result might be we complete 6 kits a quarter. That's a goal that we can rally a team behind, and that keeps everyone moving in the same direction. A production coordinator might say, let me put a job posting up for more modelers, whereas a pipeline developer here might say, I can help with that by creating tools to automate some of the texturing process. These objectives are really short. They usually take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. We revisit and adjust them every quarter, every year. We use them to bring everyone on the team together working in the same direction, which is one of the biggest strengths of having a goal. But completing an objective is not crossing a finish line. That's just a milestone on the journey to our goals. Our mission, our overall goal, is to enable and inspire. That's the goal of the company. And that's a goal that's big enough that we will never fully accomplish it. And at the same time, it's a goal that we cross the finish line on every single day. And this here is how we avoid this post-release depression. It's not just by creating a goal that you can never accomplish. It's by creating a goal that we can live in the act of accomplishment and never be on the other side of. And it's wonderful when you work for a company whose mission you believe in. It's actually really important when it comes to feeling fulfilled in the work you do. But our lives are more complex than our jobs. And even if we fully believe in the company's mission, that doesn't take the place of having our own personal goals. And while I know that our team at Kitbash is aligned at work, I also know that every person here has their own goals, including myself. And these are just as important. What's even more important is making sure we set the right goals. So when I look back at my career and the personal goals that I've had, there was really only one that didn't leave me feeling lost and empty at the end of it. And it was my first goal, to do art every day. It's a goal that I'm still feeling the accomplishment of. I still get to do this every day. And that's a goal I get to live over and over. And yes, that goal evolves. I've gotten to be much more specific about what that looks like, but the spirit remains the same. Sometimes that means creating paintings for a project I'm excited about. Sometimes it means creating my own projects. And other times it means talking about art with a room full of artists in hopes of inspiring them. So if I can give you anything today to walk away with, it's this. Setting the right goals is the difference between feeling grateful or feeling empty. And the best goals are the ones that you can live every day. So don't chase the accolades or the projects or the money or the title. Chase your perfect day. Thank you. Oh, and of course, bungle it in the final slide. Um, and I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions. I'll get a little bigger on this screen if I can figure that out. Um, and there's probably going to be quite the delay, but if y'all want to chat about anything, I'll stick around for a couple more minutes. Thank you guys. Thank you, Glow Crow and John and Luis and Sabines and Girl 2341. John, good catch. I didn't even realize that. That was probably before I got these. Thank you, Proxy. Thank you, Katie. I think that's something. Yeah, Glow Crow, I feel you. I feel like we don't talk about it often. We're so focused on accomplishing the goal, we don't think about what happens afterwards. So you're not alone. It's normal, and there's a way around it. Man, I'm sorry that we're not in an actual conference at Lightbox, because now would be the time to go get some drinks on a Friday. Luis, what do you think the best way to build good company culture and teamwork is? It's a constant challenge. I think it changes. It's a different answer for everyone because not every culture should be the same or is the same. I tell people when we hire at Kitbash that most people would not like working here, and some people will love working here. We have a very specific culture, and our goal is to find people who add to that and who enjoy that. And it's not for everyone. And so I think different cultures are important because people are different and like different things. Um, but I think it starts at the top. Um, if I'm sad and miserable every day, then I know the people I work with are going to be sad and miserable every day. If I'm happy, they'll be happy. Um, if I take responsibility when something doesn't go right, then I know that the people I manage directly under me are going to take responsibility, and the people that they manage will take responsibility when something goes wrong. And so I think building a good culture um, is about being very self-aware that when you run a company, you have an uneven amount of influence in the vibe of the company, and you have to be very careful and aware of that. Um, and then when it comes to teamwork, I think that's our jobs as managers is to constantly be coaching and teaching um, all the players who are doing the day-to-day work how to work as a team and how to work as a team even better. It's not one of my strong suits. It's definitely one of Banks's strong suits. He is an amazing coach. I've learned a lot from him in that respect, but I think it's a constant process of learning. Girl, girl, 2341, happily ever after. So it's like happily ever after, but there's more to it. Am I getting that right? It's never happily ever after, as long as we can recognize that. Um, you can strive for your perfect day, and you're still going to have bad days. It's okay. Some people, some days are just bad days. Um, the difference here is setting a goal that is not a one and done goal. If you set a goal, and it doesn't have to be a perfect day, it could be, but it should be something that can be experienced over and over again. And I think that can help with avoiding this post release depression because then it's never behind you. It's something that is continuous. How do you keep alive a project? It has to end at some point. How do you keep evolving something like a story? Any advice? That's a good question, Lorenzo. Um, there's a great book called, what was it? Creativity Inc., where Ed Catmull talks about this with Pixar, where he talks about actually post release depression when the first Toy Story came out, and then realized that his goal or his mission was no longer about creating the best movie that he could, but about creating the best studio that could continue to produce great projects. And I think it's a different way of thinking about it. Yes, you're going to have finish lines. There are things that need to go out the door, but don't set that as your North Star, as your main driving force. And that's why at Kitbash we have a distinction between what our mission is, which is our overarching goal, and what our objectives are. Objectives we cross the finish line on, but objectives are not the why. They're not the driving force. The objectives are only there to serve the mission. And so there's not a whole lot of post-release depression when you've hit a key result that you needed to hit in that year, or when we put out a new website, or when we launch a new product. That's not the driving force, and so we're able to avoid a good amount of that post-release depression, but still be able to ship things, get them out the door, and strive for excellence within them. Rebecca, thanks for the talk. How would you apply some of these tips if you approached making another project with a definite endpoint like a video game? Rebecca, I approach these projects constantly with Kitbash still. We have released 4 updates to all of the kits. We have built websites. We are building the first piece of software right now, which the development of that software took much more time, much more money, and much more people than the video game ever did. And it is way more of my baby than that video game ever is. Um, and it's really easy to fall into that trap. Um, but when I look at those projects now, I see the launch as the starting line. That when we launch that, it starts a new chapter, and that excitement about that. It's not about, oh, when we cross this, we have finally done it. It's like, no, no, no. When this comes out, now we get to start doing something different. And that creates the excitement that can be relived after the point of completion. It's keeping the end in mind of thinking about what does the week after look like. And if you don't have anything in your mind of what that week after looks like, it's going to feel empty. It's going to feel bad. If I were to do a video game again, I would treat it the same way of like, um, keep the objectives short and sweet. If it takes a couple years to develop, that's fine too. But don't be doing it for the end result of launching it. If that was the only reason I was making a game, it wouldn't be worth, that goal is not worth the driving force. Thanks for the talk. Glow Crow. I hope you managed to get the right link to LBX soon. I'm going to be emailing Bobby in a second, apologizing for my inability to use YouTube. Cool, guys. If you guys have any other questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can wrap this up. Sabines, how are you able to balance work and personal projects and stay productive? Thank you again. You're welcome. Balance, I wouldn't say is a good word. I would just work more, which is not balance. Staying productive, luckily, is not my challenge. Actually, my challenge is the opposite. How do I not be productive? That's what I struggle with. And it's a double-edged sword. Neither's good, neither's bad. They're both just challenges to be aware of. When I was making the game, I'd wake up early at like 6 or 7 a.m., get 3 hours on the game, and then go to work. I was an art director at the time, work my 8 hours, come back to another hour or two on the game, and then shut down for the night. And I just kept a very rigorous schedule until the game needed more attention than I could give it with that the other job. Um, and then I went full time on it. But even when we launched Kit Bash, I was still developing the game. We were publishing the game. We were building Kit Bash, and I was still doing freelance art direction and map painting. Um, so, time management and just making sure to be very organized and rigorous with what hours am I dedicating to what and being consistent with it. How did you organize something like Kit Bash? Did you think about it, or was it a random idea? Did you have a period where you thought it was wrong after or before the release? Um, I wanted someone else to do it. That's the truth of it. I didn't want to do it. I wanted someone else to just do this and have a big library of assets that you knew they were all set up in a standard way, that you knew they would be able to work in production, that had cohesive sets of parts. That was something I knew would make my job as an artist a lot easier, and I was waiting for someone else to do it, and I waited long enough, and no one did it, so then um, we did it. Um, I always thought it was a good idea. I didn't always know if I was capable of executing it, but I always knew that it needed to exist from when we started. And we were very deliberate about just about everything we've done with Kit Bash, I will say. We've learned a lot along the way, but I wouldn't say we had too many happy accidents. I think we've spent a lot of time thinking through every step of this and always looking 3 to 5 years ahead of what are we building now and how does that lead towards our ultimate goal, which is working on the metaverse. And we really work backwards from that. Girl 2341 says, how do you keep jealousy at bay when others finish their projects but you're not done with yours? man, who cares about other people? I mean, their projects. It's just, I've never looked at someone else's project and thought, man, why are they doing this and I'm not? Um, I'm too focused on doing what I want to do. And I'd say keep your focus on what you're doing, like horse with blinders on what you're doing. And when someone else has success, that takes nothing away from you. There's enough success and enough admiration and all of that to go around to as many people as there are who deserve it. Um, I think instead, what I enjoy is I love being surrounded by other people who are doing great things, and I love supporting them, and I love getting to share their moments of victory with them, um, and in turn, getting to share my moments of victory with them. Um, Accomplishing anything is even more empty when you have no one to share it with. And it's way more fulfilling when you have people who have been on the journey with you or have peers who you've supported in the past. So I wouldn't look at another person's project and compare yourself. And um, I would instead completely flip that around and um, be grateful that you get to be alongside someone during their moment of accomplishment. Basically, what I'm saying, girl, girl, 2341, you do your thing. You run your race. Your time will come. Just stay focused. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll let you guys get going on to some more Lightbox fun, and I'm excited to check out what's going on at Lightbox. So, yeah, huge shout out to Bobby for having me on, and thank you guys for joining and letting me ramble for a bit. Um, Hope you guys set some good goals. I hope you guys avoid some of the post-release depression. If you're working on a big project right now and you've set a finish line, look up post-release depression. Start to see how other people handled it. This is just my way of handling it. But I think it's really interesting the more you dive in. Um, you start to see a lot of people you wouldn't expect who maybe you admire or you look up to. They might have created something that you thought was uh, mind blowing, and then you hear what it was like for them when it came out, and it's a very different story. And the more we can learn about it now, the better we can prepare ourselves for when we do have our moments of accomplishment to not feel empty afterwards. Um, Lorenzo, one more question. If there's time, how do you start a collaboration with someone without knowing them, and how does it usually work? Usually it's just a quick message of love your work, would love to do something with you. Um, I don't think it's a little tougher if you don't know them. You kind of both have to at least share some respect for each other's artwork and both be in a place where you're both ready for a collaboration, where you both have time, where um, that's something you want to do. It's hit or miss. And when it hits, it's awesome because you kind of find that perfect timing for two people, and usually 1 + 1 = 3. Um, but I'd say don't be afraid to reach out. The worst that can happen is they say not now. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Have an amazing weekend. Enjoy Lightbox, and I'll talk to you soon. Oh, and if you have other questions or anything like that, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm a little slow on the socials, but I do try to get it. Just at Maxx Burman VFX on Instagram, and you can check out Kitbash at Kitbash3D. Cool. Thanks, guys.